And good day. Thank you for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. We appreciate you tuning in with us. Tamara Scott Live is what we call the show sometimes, and sometimes we call it Truth for Our Time because we bring you truth for our time, helping you live God's Word in today's world and helping you when the headlines hit home. These are all things we're dealing with, and it's Wednesday. It's kind of hump day, which I kind of like doing the show on Wednesday. It's kind of my bright spot, and it kind of it helps us look forward to something in the middle of the week. Ryan Northfield is my producer. He's the one that makes everything look good, even though I'm usually throwing things at him at the last minute. And we're often dealing with other complications. Today, there were like, I don't know how many fire trucks and police cars and sirens and lights and ambulances outside our studio. I don't know what's going on. I did manage to make it here in time, but I don't know what the holdup is. And I think that's probably a pretty perfect segue or opener into life today, because so often you get up and you have your to-do list, and seldom do you ever get to it or get to it in the order that you thought you would or as you thought you would without somebody else, some obstacle or something in the way. And I think that's what we're dealing with in America today too. Families are just trying to raise their kids. They just want to provide. They want to have that life they dreamed of, and there's so many obstacles in the way, whether it's Obamacare now, unaffordable health care. Really, seriously, I'm not trying to be political, but there are so many people who cannot afford the health care. I was just reading an email last night of someone who'd been hospitalized. They were going to keep them in for observation. That way, Medicaid or Medicare didn't pay, and the patient would be forced to pay out of pocket. And this particular person said, "You're not keeping me," basically against almost the bouncer of a hospital trying to keep him there. He got himself out because he was determined they were not going to keep him there. So there's just a lot going on right now. And I think most families just want to do what's best and raise their kids. We have some deadbeats out there. We know that. There are no illegitimate kids, but there are some illegitimate parents. We get that. But for the most part, people want to raise their kids and want to provide and want to be that good leader in their home, and there's just so many other things pulling them away, moms, dads pulling them away, activities. And so for that, I would say, moms and dads, I would invite you to go through the list and see what it is that you need to drop. Go through the list and see what it is that's in your way from fulfilling the mission that you have and being the parent that you need to be and raising kids in God's way. So joining me today for the first segment of our show is Brad Sherman. He's a pastor from Iowa, a local guy here in our state, and yet I think he's having some influence on national politics, certainly with national leaders, and he's also working with the Republican National Committee. Now, if you're partisan and if you're not a Republican, I would invite you to stay on this phone call. You might just learn something today that I think you probably need to hear. So, I invite you to stay on. Second half of this show, we're going to have Dr. James Arnold. Dr. James Arnold has been in education for several decades, and he's going to talk to us, what else, about the Common Core, the Iowa Core, and about opting out, the option game, about what Common Core is and what it's not, the myths, and we'll just kind of talk about some of those issues. But first I want to go to Brad. Thank you so much for being with us, Brad Sherman.
It's my pleasure to be here with you, Tamara.
And the plan was for you to be in studio, and of course you had those obstacles that get in the way, but you were with a very productive meeting this morning. If you want to share, why don't you first share with our listeners who you are, how long you've been here. You're not just a fly-by-night pastor. You've been in the same church quite a while.
Yeah, I moved to Iowa in 1981. We started a campus ministry at the University of Iowa, and our church has been there now for over 30 years. I felt compelled, based on biblical principles, to try to bring godly values back into the political arena. So I've been involved with that from time to time, and more so recently, just because the state of things in our nation is getting to the point where more and more people are getting concerned, and we're feeling a sense of urgency. And of course, there are many values. You know, I've worked a lot in the pro-life area with Informed Choice of Iowa. Served as board chair for that, and was one of the co-founders. And we also get involved with, like we were saying, the political arena, and try to work with presidential candidates when they come through, and just try to make a difference, support the local candidates, try to help educate. That's one of the biggest things that we need to do.
And so the meeting you just had was with members of the RNC?
Yes, Ted Conley, who's a national faith outreach director for the RNC, is here in town. He's a good friend. Got to know him a couple of years ago. He's a solid believer, a Christian, and was on a trip to Israel that actually you were on as well, I think, Tamara. And I got to know Chad and his wife, Dana. And Chad is working to get Christians engaged in the process. And if Christians can get involved, we're one of the largest segments, but yet sometimes people don't realize it. And then the other factor, too, is that a lot of Christians simply are not informed about how important it is, and they don't realize that they can make a difference. But actually, they're one of the most important people of all the different types of groups in the country that can get involved and should get involved. So we're trying to educate people on the fact, as pastors as well, how important it is to get involved, because a lot of pastors have the opinion that somehow it's not legal or that we don't have the right to speak. But these things are actually misconceptions, and so we're trying to correct those misconceptions as best we can and get people involved.
Yeah, we would not have the America we have today. We would not have the principles, the liberties, the freedoms that we have if it weren't for our Christian heritage and our founding fathers that gave us the principles that we have that allow for a limited government. So for those of you who are wondering, maybe you're not a Republican or maybe you're not a person of faith, let me just share this with you. In 2006, Democrats had a program, a plan in which they were going to engage evangelicals, not because they were going to change their platform or they were going to actually follow the principles of the Bible and be pro-life as the God and creator of life has called us to be, or they were going to honor marriage for what God has designed it to be, but because they simply wanted the votes. And so they set out a very aggressive plan to teach candidates how to speak to the evangelical movement and how to bring in the evangelicals. And they were very straightforward about it. They never said, we're going to uphold your biblical values. They said, we just want you to know you have a place in our party. And many evangelicals went that way. And so for those of you who are wondering why the RNC is doing this, the RNC, the Republican National Party, National Committee, still has God in their platform. They didn't kick God out. It's only fitting that they do this because many of our founding fathers, Brad, had not just a faith, but a Christian faith. So when people say to you, well, if you're going to worship your God or honor your God, why not? Whose God? Why not everyone's God? Whose God do we honor?
Yeah, that's so true. The Declaration of Independence, which is the founding document of our nation, in the first few words, it says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Those few words give us the philosophy and the purpose of government. And most people aren't aware of this. But the philosophy of American government is that there is a God, there's a Creator, and our rights come from Him. That's our philosophy. And then the purpose of government is to protect those rights. But instead of that, now we have a government that seems to think that rights come from government and that we're supposed to bow down at the altar of big government. And God called us to be free. And, there's a scripture that comes to mind, and it's one that I've preached many times. I think many pastors preach, and it says, first of all, it's in 1 Timothy 2. He says, first of all, I urge you that entreaties and prayers and petitions and thanksgiving be made on behalf of all men, for kings and all who are in authority, so that we may live a quiet and tranquil life in all godliness and dignity. Now, this is God's will for us. And I've preached that before and said, so first of all, we need to pray for our leaders. That's really a misconception because that's not what the Scripture says. It says, first of all, we should pray for all men. That's praying for the people, the population. Then for kings and authority. Then we can have a quiet and peaceful life. So this lays out an order for us here. First off, God works through the people, and then the people influence the leaders and should pray for the leaders. And then we can have a quiet and peaceful life. So the order is God, the people, and then leaders. It's not God, leaders, and people. Or, as many people who don't even believe in God, they just think it's leadership controlling the people, and God's out of the picture. So This is a concept that really needs to be reimparted, to our Christian culture.
And that really fits in with the construction of our government. We the people, for the people, by the people. We heard that, I think, Abraham Lincoln. But we are a representative republic, which is different from a democracy. We hold those accountable in office. We are Caesar. We can't blame. We don't have a dictator, thankfully, yet. And so we can't blame government because we are government in this country.
That's true, absolutely.
And so
that's what's so unique about the American form of government. People talk about American exceptionalism and that sort of thing, and that offends a lot of people. But American exceptionalism is not because we're better or American people are any different than any other people. What's exceptional about America is the form of government that our founders created, and it was exceptional because it put man, an individual, has rights before God, and that came first. And that, throughout all of history, that was just unique. And so that's why America has prospered. That's why America has been blessed so much, because it honored God, and God was in the hearts of the people. And we've moved so far away from that. We're starting to see the breakdown of our culture because we've moved away from those concepts.
Absolutely.
God is no longer first.
And government will never be able to substitute what God is to us or can do for us, and it becomes much more oppressive. But I want to also just touch on this. You hear it, I hear it. People will say we live in a democracy. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a representative republic. And the difference is very, I had a student ask me one time, and thankfully it was one of the textbooks that we were talking about, but in a democracy, the majority rules. The leader makes the rules, and whoever has majority rules. In a representative republic, it's not just the majority. It's a long thought out process. It's to take passions aside, logic sets in, and you weigh things out for the best long term for everyone, instead of a heated, passionate moment changing the day. You've all been somewhere, whether it's a soccer game or a sports event or even a court case, when the young lady in Florida, after the trial on whether or not she had killed her infant child, even after she was declared, she was acquitted, people outside the courtyard were demanding justice. They were not happy. Had we had a democracy in that day, I think they could have called her out and done, their own form of justice in the heat of a moment. The beauty of the representative republic is we set those aside and we weigh them out for what is best. And here's the other thing that I was going to get to. The ruler doesn't make the rules. The people make the rules, and the ruler is beholden to them, just like the people. That's main
true.
difference.
Yeah, the core definition of republic is ruled by law. Is that there is a set of laws that provides a foundation, and then the people democratically elect representatives to uphold those laws. That's the pattern that was laid out when Jethro gave Moses advice on how to govern Israel. Jethro told him to have the people choose leaders of 10s, 50s, 100s, etc. But they had it wasn't just whatever those people thought. It was that they had the law of God, which already established as a foundation. They understood that. So in our nation as a republic, we have a foundational set of laws. It's called the Constitution. And then our job is to democratically elect people and form a Republican style of government, whereby the representatives are supposed to rule according to the law, according to principle. But what has happened in our culture is we have most people don't even understand these concepts about a republic. And so what we do is we elect representatives, and all they just go to Washington and stick their finger in the wind and find out how the wind is blowing back home, or which special interest group is pushing them a certain way. And all that is transforming our republic to a democracy. There has to be some principle involved here. In a democracy, the laws can change every day based on which way the wind is blowing. And the fact of the matter is, there's so few people who are actually involved. It's never really the actual majority anyway that causes these things to happen. It's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. And so whoever's willing to organize and push the hardest and be the loudest, they get their will passed. And so the result is just chaos, and it's insecurity and instability. In fact, the founders believed that democracy was a very bad form of government, and they said it's incompatible with the rights of property or personal security.
So, Brad, I want to kind of flash forward to today. You are now part of the GOPfaith.com. If people want to learn more about that, they can go to the GOPfaith.com website. But you have a book yourself that helps people understand some of these principles, because what you've found is that when you're talking to your citizens, your neighbors, your fellow congressional members at church in the congregation, they don't know. Our kids have not been taught. They've made it through a kindergarten, through a college system, and they've not been taught the freedoms that we have, the liberties that we prize. They don't know why to protect them because they don't know they exist. So what would you say is some of those first few things that people want that they don't know that they should?
Well, you mentioned the booklet that you've seen. It's called the Freedom Quiz. It's a very short booklet, only 40-some pages, and a lot of white space in the pages on top of that. Starts off with a 10-question quiz, and I don't have it in front of me right now. But basically the concept is that people like to be free. And the principles that gave us our freedom, most people don't understand what those are. So what we've done is we've created a survey. We do the survey, and then we ask people that if we can give them the results of the survey, then we give them a free booklet. The survey is essentially a little quiz, and once people go through it, they begin to realize that, I don't know the answer to this. I don't know the answer to that. So they're interested in reading the book. And the goal is to educate people on some basic principles. We hold our conferences and big banquets and summits and all these sort of things, and these are good and very important, and they need to be done. But for the most part, I've been involved in this stuff for a lot of years. And what we usually end up doing is preaching to the choir, as they say. We're preaching to people who already agree with us for the most part. We might encourage them and we might educate them a little deeper. But for the most part, it's the same crowd. So this is designed to reach outside of our bubbles and to find a way to impart principles of freedom to people that haven't really considered these issues before. And we did a pilot survey at the Iowa County Fair. We surveyed over 100 people, 130-some people. And it was very interesting what we found. 76% of the people said, yes, we'd like to see the results of the survey. And so we sent the results out, gave them free booklets. And but the level of knowledge that people had regarding these simple questions about our freedom was pretty astounding. It was very, very low. Out of 131 people, only 2 people would have made above 50% if it was a test. And those are people that I knew who had already talked about these things. And so the level of knowledge is pretty bad. My wife ran into one of the people who did the survey at the grocery store, and she said, I'd like to see the results of the survey, even though I didn't ask for it. She said, is everyone as dumb as I am?
Oh.
And I told my wife, I said, you need to encourage her. People are not dumb.
Right.
It's simply that we haven't been given the correct information.
Right.
So that's why what inspired this whole concept that I'm talking about is a quote by Thomas Jefferson, and he essentially said that the true correction of constitutional abuse is to educate the people, not to take power away from them if they're not able to exercise their discretion properly, but to educate them. And so that's what this is. It's an educational effort. We go over things like, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. Can you legislate morality? Where is separation of church and state found? Things like that. And about taxes. Most people don't realize that the average American, the average blue-collar American, pays 60% of their money to the government. It's not just income tax. It's every kind of tax, gas tax, sales tax, all the licenses and fees that we pay for all the time. And people don't realize these facts. And they don't realize that our separation of church and state is found nowhere in any of our official documents. And it's a misnomer, and the church has to be involved, if we're going to make a difference and be salt and light in our culture. And
so in these the last bit of this segment, I'm talking with Brad Sherman. You can get a hold of Brad, probably GOPfaith.com, or Brad, is there an easier way for them to get a hold of you?
Well, I've set up a temporary website. It's not going to be temporary. It's bradshermanmobile.com. That's where you can see what I'm doing with the GOP faith concept. And there's a pledge there, 3 simple things that people can do to simply get involved and help educate others regarding how important it is to vote for godly values, particularly with this election coming up. So it's bradshermanmobile.com. It's not a cell phone company. Mobile just means I'm on the move. And so If you go there, you'll see what it's talking about. There's a contact link down at the bottom. I'd love to hear from folks and get you plugged into the things I'm doing. There are a lot of good folks out there that are doing educational works, and we just have to work together and do the best we can and trust the rest of God.
Now, I want to also, I'm going to thank our sponsors right now before I forget. We'll thank Christians for America, Crave, Christians for America, doing work similar to Brad. Dr. Don Swarthout wrote a book, very good book, on really the war against America with the ACLU and what's happening against so many Christians today. And appreciate what they do to help us stay on the air. Also, Webcast One, which is the studio that powers us, and that's how we can come to you today. So we want to thank those two. Brad Sherman, you can get a hold of him. But Brad, those three things you mentioned that people should be doing, because let's talk about this. Right now, here we are in America, land of the free, home of the brave, and for all of those brave who fought and gave us, not our liberties, our rights come from God, but they gave us the protection and the freedom in which we enjoy them. And now so many of them are being taken while we watch, without bloodshed, through a mayor's edict in Houston, Texas, when she subpoenas 5 sermons because she simply doesn't like the content of them. And I think she might have overstepped her powers to begin with. What would you say to people? I mean, we have some very incredible issues happening right here in America unfolding before our eyes.
Yes, the situation in Houston is really quite amazing. She subpoenaed more than just their sermons. The sermons are available for anybody who wants to attend church. But she subpoenaed their text messages, their emails with their staff, all their internal communications. I mean, it was such an amazing overstep of authority. It was a complete trampling of the First Amendment, not only of freedom of speech, but freedom of religion. And she is backing down because there was quite an uproar. But this is just an example of how close we are,
right?
Nazi-style, Gestapo-type stuff. And so this GOP faith pledge that you mentioned, at Brad Sherman Mobile, you can sign up for that. There's 3 simple steps to this pledge. It's civic responsibility. In other words, educate someone, help them, and we provide on the website material to download to simply give to someone. And if you've done that, you've educated them. And then ask them to register to vote. We also have links on the website for voter registration forms. And here in Iowa, you can register even on the day of voting, so it's not too late. And then the third thing is vote for Christian values. Vote for those who don't believe in killing babies. Vote for those who believe in godly values. And, that's our duty as Christians. And so to help with that, we also have links to voter guides. They're nonpartisan. This is where the candidates stand on these issues that are important to godly values. And so educate with civic responsibility, help people get registered to vote, help them know who to vote for through a voter guide. It's just that simple. And if folks will sign up on that website, I'll send you an email. It's a template email, and all you have to do is call a couple of friends and say, hey, I'm sending an email, watch for it. And when you send the email out, it's got everything on it that I just described. They can pass it on to the next person, and we can just keep this going and hopefully generate some real momentum in terms of these values.
And so, honestly, I'm upfront with our listeners. I believe this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and I think that's why we've enjoyed so many of the freedoms that we have. If you don't, all the more reason that you should want to get us out of some of these government programs where government should not be. You would really like the separation of church and state that's in the Bible, because it calls a clear definition of what government is designed to do and ordained to do and what it's not, and it would save you as a taxpayer all kinds of money. If you are a Judeo believer, if you do believe that there's any truth at all to the Word of God, then we need to stand on it, and we need to set other things aside, whether it's party affiliations, whether it's loyalty to unions. You need to find, as Brad said, candidates who will, one, stand on that principle. The principles are our founding father that made this republic strong. And Brad, go ahead.
what you're saying reminds me of something I heard just recently. A friend of mine in Pennsylvania goes over there to do business into China, and he knows one of the top government officials in the communist government in China, and they've become friends. This official told him in just a one-on-one conversation that what he and some of his friends do after their meeting is they sit around and they talk about the best form of government. And he told my friend that they thought the best form of government was the government that was in America. And my friend's a Christian, and he said, well, you understand that only what makes our form of government work is Christian values and Christianity. That's what it was founded upon. And this communist official said, oh, yeah, of course, we understand that. This communist official said, anyone who honestly studies history can see that where Christianity flourishes, everything goes better and people are more free. And so here is a communist who gets it even better than people in our own government. And so, Christianity by nature never forces anybody. Any form of Christianity that forces people is not true Christianity. But any honest person who understands history will understand that Christianity and the principles of Christianity and the Judeo-Christian ethic have generated the freest cultures in the world. And so whether a person wants to become a Christian and serve Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior or not, that's a personal decision. We can't do that for anybody, and all we can do is share truth. But I would encourage anybody, whether they make the decision to follow Jesus or not, I would encourage them to support Christian values in government, because that's the foundation of our freedom.
Brad Sherman has been my guest. You can find him at bradshermanmobile.com, bradshermanmobile.com, SHERMAN. Brad Sherman, I thank you for what you're doing, traveling, taking time away from your family. Appreciate it. And we will be right back after these messages, so I invite you to stay with us. We'll be coming back with Dr. James Arnold. Dr. James Arnold has been in education for decades, and I think you'll just enjoy his personality as well as his experience in a wide range of areas and his wisdom. And we'll be talking about the Common Core, some of the myths, some of the options that are out there for parents, and testing. I think we'll be talking a good deal about the testing. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages as we thank our sponsors.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
Metro Ford's on everywhere. Metro Ford's on everywhere.
See 'em here, see 'em there. You got bad credit? We don't care.
Metro Ford's on everywhere. Metro Ford's on everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com.
Metro Ford's on everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com today.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent.